My mother-in-law hated my wedding dress. She said it looked like a tablecloth. Then she tried to cancel my order 1 week before the wedding. I, F28, am supposed to be getting married to the love of my life, Daniel, M30, in 1 week. We've been planning this wedding for over a year, and it's been a roller coaster. Not because of Daniel, he's been amazing, but because of his mother, Beatrice, F60. Beatrice is intense. She's the definition of an entitled, overbearing, helicopter mother-in-law. From the moment we got engaged, she's tried to control every aspect of the wedding, despite the fact that Daniel and I are paying for everything ourselves. At first, I tried to be accommodating. I understood that she was excited, that she wanted to be involved. I included her in some of the planning decisions and asked for her input on things like the flowers and the cake. But it quickly became clear that she wasn't interested in helping. She wanted to dictate. She started by suggesting, demanding, that we change our venue. We'd chosen a beautiful, rustic chic barn in the countryside, which perfectly reflected our style. Beatrice, however, wanted a formal ballroom in a fancy hotel, something more appropriate for a wedding of her son's caliber. Her words, not mine. We politely declined, explaining that we loved the barn and that it fit our budget. She sulked for weeks, making passive-aggressive comments about how disappointed she was. Then came the guest list. We'd agreed on a relatively small wedding, around 100 guests, mostly close friends and family. Beatrice insisted that we invite her entire extended family, her business associates, her book club. The list went on and on. It would have doubled the size of the wedding and blown our budget completely out of the water. Again, we said no. Again, she sulked. The battles continued. She hated the color scheme, too modern, the music, too informal, the food, too unrefined. She even tried to convince Daniel to change his suit, saying that the one he'd chosen was too casual for a groom. Through it all, Daniel has been incredibly supportive. He stood up to his mother multiple times, telling her that it's our wedding, not hers. But she just doesn't listen. She sees him as an extension of herself, and she believes she has the right to control every aspect of his life, including his wedding. I've tried to talk to her, woman to woman. I've tried to explain that I appreciate her input, but that ultimately the decisions are ours to make. I've tried to be patient, to be understanding, to be the bigger person, but I'm reaching my breaking point. And then came the dress. I found my dream dress months ago. It's a beautiful bohemian-style lace gown with delicate sleeves and a flowing skirt. It's perfect for the barn venue, and it makes me feel like a bride. I showed Beatrice a picture of the dress, expecting her to be, at least, politely supportive. Her reaction? "Oh, honey, that's not appropriate. It's far too revealing. And lace, it looks like a tablecloth. You need something more elegant, something with structure, something like my wedding dress." She then proceeded to show me pictures of her own wedding dress, a massive, puffy-sleeved 1980s monstrosity that looked like it belonged in a museum. I tried to explain that I loved my dress, that it made me feel beautiful, that it was my style. She just waved me off. "You'll regret it," she said. "You'll look back at the pictures and cringe. I know best. I'll help you find a proper dress." I thought that was the end of it. I thought she'd finally gotten the message that I wasn't going to change my mind. I was wrong. Yesterday, 1 week before the wedding, I received a call from the bridal boutique where I'd purchased my dress. The owner informed me, very apologetically, that Beatrice had called her, claiming to be me, and had tried to cancel my dress order. She'd told the owner that I'd changed my mind and wanted a more traditional gown. The owner, thankfully, had been suspicious. She'd remembered me, and she'd recognized that the voice on the phone wasn't mine. She'd called me to confirm. I was livid, beyond livid. I was shaking with rage. Beatrice had crossed a line, a major line. She'd tried to sabotage my wedding dress behind my back just because she didn't like it. I called Daniel, and he was equally furious. He called his mother, and they had a screaming match on the phone. I could hear Beatrice yelling about how she was just trying to help, how I was being ungrateful and disrespectful. After the call, Daniel turned to me and said, "I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do anymore. She's out of control." I looked at him, and I made a decision I never thought I'd make. "I'm uninviting her," I said. "I'm uninviting your mother from the wedding." Daniel was shocked, but he didn't argue. He knew I was at my limit. I sent Beatrice a text message informing her that she was no longer welcome at our wedding. I told her that her behavior had been unacceptable, that she had crossed too many lines, and that I couldn't have someone at my wedding who was actively trying to sabotage it. She hasn't responded, but I know this is going to cause a major family drama. I know Daniel's father will likely refuse to come too. Eita, for uninviting my future mother-in-law from my wedding 1 week before the ceremony, for trying to cancel my dress order. I feel justified, but I also feel guilty and terrified. Update 1. As expected, the shit has hit the fan. After I sent Beatrice the text uninviting her, she went ballistic. She called Daniel, screaming, crying, accusing me of tearing the family apart. She said I was a manipulative bitch who was trying to control her son. Daniel, to his credit, stood up to her. He told her that she was the one who had caused this, that her behavior had been unacceptable, and that he supported my decision 100%. Then she called me. I didn't answer. She left a series of increasingly unhinged voicemails, ranging from threats to pleas to outright insults. She also started a text message barrage, sending me dozens of messages, calling me every name in the book, accusing me of being selfish, ungrateful, and disrespectful. She said I was ruining her son's life and that I would regret this. I blocked her number. Then she turned to social media. She posted a long, rambling rant on Facebook, painting herself as the victim, claiming that I was a bridezilla who had stolen her son and was now trying to exclude her from his life. She said I was unstable and controlling, and that she was worried about Daniel's well-being. Her post, of course, attracted a lot of attention. Some of her friends and family members, the ones who only know her side of the story, commented with messages of support, condemning my actions and calling me all sorts of nasty names. But surprisingly, some people sided with me. A few of Daniel's cousins who had witnessed Beatrice's behavior firsthand commented on the post, calling her out on her lies and manipulations. They said that I was a wonderful woman and that Beatrice was out of line. The Facebook post turned into a full-blown family war with relatives taking sides and arguing in the comments. It was a mess. As for Daniel's father, Robert, M62, he initially tried to stay neutral. He called Daniel and said he was disappointed in both of us, that he didn't want to get involved in the drama. But Beatrice, I'm sure, wouldn't let him stay neutral. She pressured him, guilted him, manipulated him. And so he called Daniel again a few hours later and informed him that he wouldn't be attending the wedding either. He said that he couldn't condone my actions, that he had to support his wife. Daniel was devastated. He'd always had a close relationship with his father, and this was a major blow. He tried to reason with Robert, to explain our side of the story, but Robert wouldn't listen. He just kept repeating that he had to stand by Beatrice, and that we were making a huge mistake. The wedding is in 6 days, and now Daniel's parents, his only parents, won't be there. I feel terrible. I feel like I've ruined everything. I know I did the right thing for myself, for my sanity, but I can't help but feel guilty for causing this rift in Daniel's family. Daniel, bless his heart, has been incredibly supportive. He keeps reassuring me that I did nothing wrong, that his mother's behavior was unacceptable, and that he's proud of me for standing up for myself. He says that he's sad his parents won't be there, but that he understands my decision and that he's choosing me, choosing our future together. We've decided to go ahead with the wedding, as planned. We're not going to let Beatrice ruin our special day, but it's hard. It's hard to be excited, to be joyful when there's this dark cloud hanging over us. I'm trying to focus on the positive, on the love and support we've received from our friends and my family. They've been amazing, rallying around us, offering to help in any way they can. But I can't help but feel like I've started my marriage with a major family conflict, a conflict that may never be fully resolved. I'll update again after the wedding. I don't know what to expect. I just hope we can get through this together. Update 2. The wedding happened, and it was eventful, to say the least. Despite the drama with Beatrice and Robert, Daniel and I were determined to have a beautiful, joyful wedding. We focused on each other, on our love, on the commitment we were making. The day started beautifully. My bridesmaids and I got ready at a nearby hotel, laughing, sharing stories, and sipping champagne. I felt calm, surprisingly calm. I put on my dress, the bohemian lace gown that Beatrice had so vehemently opposed, and I felt beautiful. I felt like myself. I felt like a bride. My father walked me down the aisle, his eyes filled with tears. I saw Daniel waiting for me at the altar, his face beaming with love. The ceremony was perfect. It was intimate, emotional, and filled with love. We exchanged our vows, our voices trembling with emotion. We kissed, and the world seemed to fade away. We were married. The reception was held at the rustic chic barn, just as we'd planned. The decorations were beautiful, the food was delicious, the music was perfect. Everyone was having a wonderful time. Our friends and family were dancing, laughing, and celebrating. And then she arrived, Beatrice. I saw her standing at the entrance to the barn, her face a mask of fury. She was wearing a bright red dress, a dress that screamed, "Look at me." She was clearly trying to upstage me, to make a scene. My heart sank. I knew this was going to be bad. Daniel saw her too, and his face hardened. He took my hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "Don't worry," he whispered. "I've got this." He walked towards his mother, and I followed, close behind. "What are you doing here?" Daniel asked, his voice cold. "You weren't invited." Beatrice glared at him. "I'm your mother," she hissed. "I have every right to be here." "No, you don't," Daniel said. "You forfeited that right when you tried to sabotage our wedding, when you disrespected my wife, when you treated us like dirt." Beatrice's face turned even redder. "She's not your wife," she shrieked. "She's a manipulative, controlling bitch who's stolen you from me." Several guests gasped. The music stopped. Everyone was staring. I felt my cheeks burn with shame and anger, but I refused to let her get to me. "Beatrice," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "You need to leave. Now," she scoffed. "I'm not going anywhere. This is my son's wedding, and I'm staying." "No," Daniel said, his voice firm. "This is our wedding, and you're not welcome here." He then turned to two of his groomsmen, who were also close friends, and said, "Please escort my mother off the property." The groomsmen, both large, muscular men, stepped forward. Beatrice, realizing she was outnumbered, started to back down, but she couldn't resist one final parting shot. "You'll regret this, Daniel," she yelled. "You'll both regret this. You're making a huge mistake. She's ruining your life." Then she turned and stormed out of the barn, her red dress billowing behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, people started to clap and cheer and whoop. Our friends and family, the people who truly loved and supported us, were on our side. They'd witnessed Beatrice's behavior, and they weren't having it. The music started again, the dancing resumed, and the party continued. But the incident had cast a shadow over the evening. Daniel and I tried to put on a brave face to enjoy the rest of our wedding, but it was difficult. We knew that this wasn't over, that Beatrice wouldn't just let it go. Update 3. It has been 2 weeks since the wedding, and as predicted, Beatrice is not letting things go. She's upped her game, taking the smear campaign to a whole new level. First, she started posting even more frequently on social media, painting herself as the heartbroken, rejected mother, and me as the evil, controlling daughter-in-law. She's blocked me, of course, but Daniel's cousins, the ones who are on our side, have been sending us screenshots. Her posts are filled with lies, half-truths, and exaggerations. She claims that I brainwashed Daniel, that I forced him to choose between me and his family, that I'm destroying his life. She's also started contacting our mutual friends, trying to turn them against me. She's telling them fabricated stories about my past, claiming that I'm unstable, manipulative, and gold-digging. Some of our friends, thankfully, have seen through her lies and have cut her off, but others, they're starting to believe her. I've received several messages from people I thought were my friends, questioning my character, accusing me of being controlling and selfish. It's incredibly hurtful and frustrating. I feel like I'm constantly having to defend myself, to justify my actions, to prove that I'm not the monster Beatrice is making me out to be. Then, there's the family drama. Robert, Daniel's father, is still refusing to speak to us. He's completely sided with Beatrice, and he's cut off all contact with Daniel. Daniel is devastated. He's trying to stay strong, but I can see the pain in his eyes. He misses his father, and he's heartbroken that his parents have chosen to believe Beatrice's lies over their own son. We've also heard through the grapevine that Beatrice is considering legal action. She's claiming that I interfered with her relationship with Daniel, that I alienated him from his family, and that I caused her emotional distress. She's threatening to sue me. I've consulted with my lawyer, and she's not too worried. She says Beatrice's claims are baseless and that she has no legal grounds to sue me, but it's still stressful, still another thing to worry about. I've started seeing a therapist. It is really helping me. We're trying to focus on the positive, on our new life together. We're trying to move on, to put this drama behind us. But it's hard. It's like Beatrice is a constant looming presence in our lives, always trying to sabotage our happiness. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know how this will all end, but I'm determined to fight for my marriage, for my happiness, and for my sanity. I'll update again when there's more news. Thank you as always for your support. Update 4. Just when I thought things couldn't get any crazier, they did. Beatrice followed through on her threat. She filed a lawsuit against me. The lawsuit was ridiculous. She was claiming intentional infliction of emotional distress, alienation of affection, claiming I'd intentionally damaged her relationship with Daniel, and even defamation, claiming I'd spread lies about her to our friends and family. She was seeking a substantial amount of money in damages, claiming that my actions had caused her severe emotional trauma and irreparable harm to her reputation. My lawyer thankfully was unfazed. She said the lawsuit was frivolous, that Beatrice had no legal grounds, and that it was likely a scare tactic, a way to intimidate me into backing down. But it was still stressful. It was still another thing to deal with, another layer of drama on top of everything else. I was starting to feel overwhelmed, exhausted. I was starting to question whether this fight was even worth it. Then, I received a phone call from someone I never expected to hear from. It was Daniel's aunt, Carol, Robert's sister. Carol had always been distant. She lived in another state, and we'd only met her a few times at family gatherings. She'd always seemed polite, but reserved. I'd never gotten the sense that she was particularly close to Beatrice. "I need to talk to you," Carol said, her voice serious. "It's about Beatrice, and Robert, and Daniel." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop near my apartment. I was nervous, unsure what to expect. When I arrived, Carol was already there, sitting at a table in the corner. She looked worried. We exchanged awkward greetings, and then she got straight to the point. "I know what Beatrice has been doing," she said. "I know about the lies, the manipulation, the lawsuit, and I can't stand by and watch it happen anymore." She then proceeded to tell me a story that blew my mind. She said that Beatrice had always been controlling, manipulative, and jealous, that she'd always resented Daniel's close relationship with Robert, and that she'd tried to drive a wedge between them for years. She said that Beatrice had a history of lying, of exaggerating, of creating drama, that she'd always needed to be the center of attention, and that she'd do anything to get it. She said that Robert, for the most part, had enabled Beatrice's behavior. He'd always given in to her demands, always taken her side, even when he knew she was wrong. But then, Carol said, something changed. A few years ago, Robert had been diagnosed with a serious illness, a heart condition that required surgery and ongoing medical care. He'd kept the diagnosis a secret from everyone, except Carol. He'd confided in her, asking for her support. Carol had encouraged him to tell Beatrice, to tell Daniel, but he'd refused. He was afraid of their reaction, afraid of becoming a burden. Then, a few months ago, Robert's condition had worsened. He'd needed another surgery, a more serious one, and that's when he'd finally told Beatrice. But Beatrice's reaction wasn't what he'd expected. She hadn't been supportive. She hadn't been concerned. She'd been angry. She'd accused him of ruining her plans, of spoiling her retirement. She'd said that she couldn't handle the stress of caring for a sick husband, that she deserved better. She'd even threatened to leave him. Robert had been devastated. He'd finally seen Beatrice for who she truly was, a selfish, narcissistic woman who cared only about herself. He'd confided in Carol again, telling her everything. He'd said that he regretted enabling Beatrice for so many years, that he'd realized he'd made a mistake. He'd also told Carol about the wedding, about Beatrice's behavior, about the lawsuit. He'd said that he was ashamed of his wife, that he was disgusted by her actions. He'd asked Carol to help him make things right. And that's why Carol was here. She'd come to tell me the truth, to expose Beatrice's lies, to help me fight back. She'd also brought something with her, something that would change everything. Update 5. Carol handed me a small digital voice recorder. "Robert gave me this," she said. "He recorded a conversation he had with Beatrice a few weeks ago. He wanted me to have it in case something happened to him." I looked at the recorder, my hands trembling. I knew instinctively that this was it. This was the evidence I needed. We listened to the recording together in the coffee shop. It was chilling. The recording started with Robert and Beatrice arguing. Robert was accusing Beatrice of being selfish, of not caring about his health, of only being concerned about money. Beatrice was denying everything, claiming that she did care, that she was just stressed and overwhelmed. Then the conversation shifted. Robert started talking about the wedding, about the lawsuit, about the lies Beatrice had been spreading. "You need to stop this, Beatrice," Robert said, his voice weary. "You need to drop the lawsuit. You need to apologize to OP's name." Beatrice scoffed. "Why should I? She's the one who ruined everything. She's the one who stole Daniel from me." "She didn't steal Daniel," Robert said. "He chose her. He loves her, and you need to accept that." "I'll never accept it," Beatrice shrieked. "She's a nobody. She's not good enough for him. I deserve better. We deserve better." Then Robert said something that made my blood run cold. "You know, Beatrice," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "I'm starting to think you wanted Daniel to be unhappy. I'm starting to think you enjoyed seeing him miserable." There was a long silence. Then Beatrice said, in a voice so cold, so calculating, that it sent shivers down my spine, "Maybe I did. Maybe I wanted him to see that he could never be truly happy without me, that he'd always need his mommy, that no one would ever love him as much as I do." Robert gasped. "Beatrice, what are you saying?" "I'm saying," she continued, her voice dripping with venom, "that I made sure he wouldn't be happy with her. I made sure he'd always come crawling back to me. And if he hadn't died, I would have found a way to get rid of her. Permanently." The recording ended there. I sat there, stunned, speechless. I couldn't believe what I'd just heard. Beatrice had admitted, on tape, that she'd intentionally sabotaged Daniel's happiness, that she'd tried to destroy our marriage, and that she'd even contemplated doing something to me. Carol looked at me, her eyes filled with sadness and anger. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I had no idea she was capable of this." I shook my head. "It's not your fault," I said. "You're the only one who's been honest with me." I took the recording to Ms. Chen immediately. She listened to it, her face growing increasingly grim. "This changes everything," she said. "This is evidence of criminal intent. This is a confession." She contacted the police and we turned over the recording. The police launched an investigation. They interviewed Robert, Carol, Beatrice, and several other witnesses. The evidence was overwhelming. Beatrice was arrested. She was charged with multiple counts of harassment, defamation, attempted extortion for the lawsuit, and conspiracy to commit harm. The news of Beatrice's arrest spread like wildfire. The local media picked up the story, and it became a national sensation. The perfect mother-in-law, the wronged victim, was exposed as a manipulative, narcissistic, potentially dangerous woman. Her social media accounts were flooded with angry messages. Her friends and family members, the ones who had previously supported her, turned on her. She was ruined, completely and utterly ruined. Robert, finally free from Beatrice's control, filed for divorce. He also issued a public apology to me and Daniel, admitting that he'd been wrong to support his wife, and that he was deeply ashamed of her actions. He's trying to rebuild his relationship with Daniel, but it's a slow process. Daniel is still hurt, still angry, but he's also willing to give his father a second chance. As for me, I'm finally starting to heal. The truth is out. Justice has been served, and I'm finally free. Update 6. It has been several months. Beatrice's trial concluded swiftly, faced with irrefutable evidence. The recording, witness testimonies, and her own history of manipulative behavior. She pleaded guilty to a reduced set of charges to avoid a lengthy prison sentence. She received a suspended sentence, probation, mandatory therapy, and a hefty fine. Most importantly, she's legally barred from contacting me, Daniel, or any member of our immediate family. The public apology Robert issued, combined with the news coverage of Beatrice's downfall, helped to repair some of the damage to my reputation. Many of those who had initially believed Beatrice's lies now understood the truth. While some whispers and judgments lingered, the overwhelming tide had turned. Daniel and I have grown even closer through this ordeal. The shared trauma, the fight for justice, and the ultimate vindication have strengthened our bond. We've learned to communicate more openly, to trust each other implicitly, and to appreciate the preciousness of our relationship. Daniel's relationship with Robert is slowly mending. It's a delicate process, filled with both forgiveness and lingering resentment. Robert is genuinely remorseful for his past actions and inactions, and he's making a sincere effort to rebuild trust. Daniel, while still hurt, is willing to give his father a chance, recognizing that he too was a victim of Beatrice's manipulation. My career has rebounded. I returned to teaching, and my colleagues and students have been incredibly supportive. I've even been offered a promotion, a testament to my resilience and dedication. We've decided to move, not to run away but to start fresh. We've found a beautiful house in a new town, a place where we can build new memories, free from the shadows of the past. It's a symbolic new beginning, a chance to create a home filled with love, laughter, and, most importantly, honesty. The financial settlement from Beatrice and Robert has been finalized. The money, while not the primary focus, has provided a sense of security and allowed us to invest in our future. We've also decided to donate a portion of it to a charity that supports victims of domestic abuse and narcissistic manipulation, hoping to help others who have experienced similar trauma. I'm still in therapy, and it continues to be an invaluable resource. I'm learning to process the complex emotion, the anger, the grief, the betrayal, and to develop healthy coping mechanisms. I'm also learning to forgive myself, to let go of the what-ifs and the should-have. Life isn't perfect. There are still moments of sadness, of doubt, of lingering pain. But those moments are becoming fewer and farther between. I'm finding joy in the everyday, in the simple things, a quiet evening with Daniel, a heartfelt conversation with a friend, a hug from a loved one. I've learned a lot from this experience. I've learned about the power of resilience, the importance of trust, and the enduring strength of love. I've also learned that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope for a brighter future. This is truly and finally my last update. I'm closing this chapter of my life, grateful for the lessons learned, the support received, and the strength I've found within myself. Thank you to everyone who has followed my journey, offered encouragement, and shared your own stories. Your kindness has meant the world to me. I'm moving forward, stronger than ever, and ready to embrace whatever the future holds. That's all for this story. I'll be back with another one. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It motivates me to create more content like this.